golden.
I love it. I am
This
so
is the
excited.
frame.
I love it. It's perfection.
Yeah.
You look great. You
Oh,
look
thanks.
ready for a gig today.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I am brand new. I'm a complete and total novice when it comes to interviewing people. So if this is unlike any other interview, there's a reason probably.
That's good.
But I have been a music lover since probably birth. My parents talk about how I woke up singing and not talking or crying. And I love music so much that I just wanted to create a platform where I could talk to artists and also other people that are in the industry so that I can give people kind of an insight, really an insight for me, to find out what it's like to be in the music industry. I know that you've been at this for a minute. So, can you tell me what your experience was with music as a child? I know you were a preacher's kid. Man, do I know so many preacher's kids.
Mm.
A very unique experience there. I actually am a preacher's kid for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. My dad was the pastor of our church in Florida. So tell me kind of about your experience with music and what made you fall in love with it to this level.
Well, as I was driving to get to my little parking spot, I saw a grandpa with his little tiny kid all dressed in a total wet rain suit because it's rainy out here today and kind of just skipping along. And when I was a kid, the memories I have of how my grandparents and my parents were was there was always music. Um, and not like a little bit. There was music always. My mother played piano, my mother sang. My father played guitar, my father sang. My three older sisters all sang and they all played. I mean, as I came along, they were all um, into piano or guitar. They ended up taking brass instruments. So, and then my grandparents as well. I mean, my grandfather played piano and guitar and sang. My grandmother played the Hawaiian guitar, like the slide kind of steel guitar. Um, my uncle played piano, just fiddle. There was so much of that in my family. One of my sisters plays fiddle. One plays French horn. So it's just not like when somebody says, I took lessons. It's like there was music everywhere. My parents walked, and I mean, my parents split when I was 5, but they had one very strong thing in common, which was music. And my father or my mother, we would either sit and watch my mother play piano, or my father would take us to my grandma's house and we would all sit around. And that's what we did. We sat around 15, 20 people strong and some friends from the congregation, and we would play music for hours. So it was really given to us, provided for us that environment. So anyway, that's where it all kind of started. The fact that my father's a minister and taught me how to play guitar, taught me how to ride a motorcycle just like him, taught me how to, learn to preach just like him, and taught me all those things. When I said I was going to music full time, that's not what I meant. That was not the idea. But at the same time, I clearly had the effervescent personality mixed with the insecurities of being the middle child, mixed with the love of music, that it's like that's usually the combination for some artistry. So
It's
anyway, and
it's a
that's the
beautiful
basic.
it's a beautiful setup for an artist. Let's put them on the stage and give them an opportunity to shine and show their talent, their love. I remember doing the same thing, sitting with family members and church members and sitting around and singing songs until the wee hours. And I was always trying to be the adult, 9 years old, not understanding why people didn't listen to what I had to say because I had something really valuable to contribute. Did you ever want to be part of the spotlight, or were you okay with kind of mixing in when everybody else was singing? I mean, were you known as the ham, per se in the group, or was you just part of it?
So I think when I ask questions of my sisters, my older sisters and my mom, they have a different view of who I was as a kid. I thought I was a pretty quiet guy, and I think I was. I think they will tell you that I was a little bit more lively and entertaining, if you will. But um, the reality is, with my family, no one ever, the ministry was first, preaching was
Right.
first, God was first. Love of music was a sharing of a blessing, not a way to like to follow music in a popular way. Obviously, would have been not their choice, because that's not serving God first. That in their mind, that was serving music first. Um, as times change, especially in my folks' mind, um, music is obviously a very big part of worship, just depending on where you take it. In my family, it was a big part of socializing and family happiness. And although we sang at church, it wasn't like you couldn't sing harmonies at church, and things like
Okay.
that, because it was considered you're deviating from the path. So, but we were also musical, that we very much wanted, to do those kind of things. So it was easy. It was easy to just want to be part of it. I never personally, it wasn't until I decided I was leaving the church, because I had to leave the church, unfortunately, in order to pursue music. That was the choice had to be made as a younger man. And so when I made that choice, that was when I thought, okay, I'm doing music and it's on me.
Now, did you
Um,
struggle
yeah.
with the idea? I mean, I grew up I have a religious background as well. There's a lot of music that I do not know. I know it now, but I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you that song was by this band or that person, because back in the day, I was listening to Sandy Patty and Lauren Harris and Michael Cart. Those are the people that I was listening to, because I wasn't, not that I wasn't allowed, although I think that maybe that wasn't allowed in your household.
Yeah, my parents, there was a lot of not allowed things. Yeah. Very, very strict that way. Well, but again, it was cool. Like there was an open mind to I mean, that's a whole other story. Yeah, there was an open mind to many things, but yeah, music. I mean, like when I was a kid, we moved into a house and they had the words AC/DC written on the side of the bedroom where I moved in, like that was going to be my room. And I was young and naive. I'm like, what's that? They're like, nothing. I'm like, what is it? Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. And so
Now,
they painted over it.
did you struggle with, I mean, it's like, to me there's like a transition in my mind from the way that I thought the majority of my life growing up and well into adulthood about, life is supposed to be centered around Jesus and then others and then you. I mean, that's the acronym for joy, right? Like I'm at the very last of the list. And then when you go into this industry where, I mean, it is a performance and you are an entertainer, but how do you talk yourself out of it feeling self-serving, which is what you've been taught your whole life, and stepping into, it's, to me it's still a ministry. To me
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
still, there's still some preaching that goes on. There's still a message to be given. How did you deal with that? I think were you around in your early 20s when you left, or were you still a
Yeah.
teenager?
Yeah. No, I was just probably, I was about 21.
So how did you talk yourself through that process to be able to be successful and excited about what you had planned for yourself?
Well, at that stage, at 20, I was not thinking about my success. I was thinking about following something that was a gut instinct. Um, and it meant leaving my family, which was a very difficult choice. But I've got animal instincts, which at least I use animal instincts. I use my internal gauge. My folks use the church's gauge.
Hmm.
And there's the difference in that they go through something to get to God and to follow with that. I look inside and I say, that feeling is inside me. I don't know what it is for everybody else, and I don't know what it is for every group. That's not what I'm, that's not the way my mind works. My mind works that there's something inside me, not a calling, but I mean, it's a thing. If there's something that said, I have to pursue this. So I'm going to have to be super vigilant and super strong to somehow, in an animal jungle world, let that tribe over there know that as much as I love them and I'm over here, I still love them very much. And so we still have a connection, even though I'm over here pursuing something else. That leads to shame, guilt, insecurities, all that stuff. And I spent most of my music life trying to prove that my choice of leaving the church 20 years back was the right decision. And my parents could finally see that, oh, we're so grateful that our little boy. And what I've come to realize is that it has nothing to do with any of that. And that it has nothing to do with, even if I could have kept climbing a ladder and kept climbing a ladder, and I would still be looking down saying, are you proud of the choice I made, even though it wasn't the right one for you guys? And that was just not self-serving. It was never going to end until the middle of COVID, which was the beautiful blessing, was that when nobody called, and all those people that you serve in this industry, and they don't call to see if you're okay. And then you wake up one day and you're like, huh, it ain't about them either. I left this to go for that, which is no different than what my parents are doing. So it then became an internal thing. And it was at that point, and I mean, that actually happened around 2019, but getting into COVID, it solidified my my stand, or how I view the industry. I don't slave to the industry anymore. I don't care about huge stream numbers and massive counts and massive promotion. That doesn't that doesn't put me to sleep at night. What puts me to sleep at night is a honest, hard day's work doing what I love to do. My parents they're proud of me now. I don't need to do something else to get that. And we've figured that part out. We've come to those terms, and I'm happy exactly where I am. I'm happy like this. I'm happy if something more happens. I'm happy if something less happens. I will deal with that because I've already gone through enough things, and so yes, you struggle with some of those things as children. I don't know if every kid is the same. I mean, I look around and I assume that not every kid has some of those dichotomies in their mind, or those paradoxes that they have to struggle through. Should I do this and should I do that? Even though you were born with a feeling to do, whatever. But once, I mean, and if you're lucky, I consider myself lucky. I love music. I love passion. I love people. I love love. And yet I had all these, I can't think of the right word, but these discrepancies inside my heart. And that led to drinking and exploring and trying all kinds of things until you finally realize, this is all the means to the wrong end. It ain't there. And there's no reason um, to be fighting those things in your head. You do have to, because you don't know any different until you know different. So
Right.
once you kind of awake from prove something, whether it be to God or whether it be to your parents. These days, I make two people happy in my 24 hours: the 8-year-old version of me and the 80-year-old version of me. If I can keep both of those guys in check, and the 80-year-old says, don't worry, keep doing what you're doing, you'll be here in by 80, you'll be okay. Or if the 80-year-old looks at me and says, dude, whatever you're doing right now, that's not going to get you to 80, so stop doing that. But then the 8-year-old also has to be able to play and have fun and run around. And so if I do those two things, my mother should also be happy. So should my father. So should the God that any one of us believes in, whether it's inside or out there. If that is where my intent is, well, then I think that's the balance for me.
That is so incredibly profound. I mean, I know people talk about, what does the little me think? A lot of times we're wrestling with a younger version of ourselves and trying to, heal those little pieces and parts that, you know, our parents are doing everything that they can to make sure that our lives are blessed and great, and
Absolutely.
that we have a wonderful path for ourselves, and a plan. Really, I feel like my parents wanted me to, there was a plan for me, a design, a cookie cutter that was set out for us, but I don't. And I have struggled with that as well, but I have spent the majority of my life trying desperately to mold myself into that cookie cutter. And I'm like, every time I spilled over, I'd be like, no, 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 just be a little bit less and a little bit less. And I have just realized since COVID, same thing, that I am designed to do and be more, that there is a connection that I have with people that I need to touch tangibly, physically have with people. And because music is such an incredible vehicle for every emotion you could possibly ever have, I was like, I can't think of anybody else I'd rather talk to than the people that are making music that reach inside of me and pull things out of me that I didn't even know were there. So all that to say, I mean, really, I'm gonna take that with me. I almost brought me to tears with that. May I make my old self proud and my young self happy. What a powerful thing. I did want to talk about one thing that you did. So I know that you said, there was a lot of music in your family, but don't you play by ear? And do your parents and the people around you, are they similar to in that way? Because I know, my best friend, she took piano lessons, and that's how she plays, because she can read music. I started playing the piano when I was 11 because somebody taught me Heart and Soul, and then I wrote another little ditty for the right hand. And my mother was like, what was that?" And I was like, "I don't know. Does it sound right?" And she was like, "What does that even mean?" And my parents didn't really have an understanding of what, except my dad maybe, but what playing by ear meant. So I kind of cheated my way through piano lessons. Like when we got to the hard parts, I was like, can you play that back for me real quick?" And then I was like,
Yeah, so I
"Oh,
can
that."
memorize it.
Right. Like I'm just going to memorize it real quick. And then she didn't know what I was doing either. So what was learning to play the piano by ear? Was there somebody guiding you, or how did that happen?
So that piano was my first instrument. It was the free one. My mother taught piano. So again, she would play every night. And as children, she would teach my oldest sister. Then there'd be lessons for my second oldest, then my first oldest. And, and when I said, yes, I want piano lessons too, she started me on the hot cross, beginner books and dun, 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 dun. Um, and, but it was absolutely and literally in between making a big pot of pasta and beefaroni for everybody and taking care of the little brand new baby, that my little sister that just came along. And then she'd run back to the living room saying, "No, you're doing that one note wrong. You go back to this." And then while I was practicing, she'd go back into the other room. So our lessons were kind of intermittent, or at least mine were. Um, they were a little, they were interrupted by things. However, I was not really good at lessons. Like maybe you,
Yeah.
I was more of a learner. Um, like with, I wanted to hear it, I wanted to play it, I wanted to feel it. I wasn't really a fan of trying to figure out where all those notes were. I would play those notes, but I didn't care about the names. So
Right.
it became difficult when I went for a couple of guitar lessons at 12. And I mean, it was a waste of the $13 or whatever it was, because, which it's not that anymore, but it was a
Not that
waste of money
anymore.
because I'd go in and they're like, "So did you practice your lessons?" I'm like, "Not really." But I did try and learn
Right.
this, or I tried to do this. And I recognize the value of what that skill set is when you learn how to read music. I just wasn't that guy. It's like when you talk about the cookie cutter and molds, you put all these children into schools and say, "Okay, it's 9 in the morning, stay put until 3 in the afternoon." It's like, not every kid is good like that. I'm an absolute agitated little guy. I don't like to sit too long. I don't sit at the computer for hours. I can't. Um, I know that now. Maybe I wasn't good like that in school too, but we didn't know that. So you roll with it, and that's why we sometimes don't know that there's other answers, because we're kind of presented with one solution. And so you think you got to fit in that mold: husband, wife, job, career, this money, that money, house, car, babies, whatever it is. And that's good for kind of a general, here's some things that the world can be. But really, there's all that other stuff out there. And Yeah, so I didn't learn music that way either. I was definitely the kind of guy that sat at, like, I went to my mother one time and said, how do you play the intro to Bryan Adams' Heaven? Da 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 da. Oh, once in your life you found someone. And I went to my mom, like, how do you play that? And she goes, I don't know. Can you get me the music? And I'm like, the notes? She goes, yeah. And I'm like, I don't got time for that. I don't even know where to find. I don't even know how to get those notes. So I just brought the tape recorder upstairs, played it again, and I went across the piano to da 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 da. Oh, there's the note that that's the first note he hits, obviously. Da da da. Oh, da da da. There it is. And so it's just different strokes, different folks, different people learn different ways, and I mean, I can't play what my mom plays. And she looks at me and she says, "Oh, you play so beautifully." And I'm like, I'm faking this. I'm faking it. Like, I have no idea what this little pinky's hitting, but I know that note's going to sound good
Right.
because I've just done it enough times.
I get
So,
that. I have had a very similar experience in that where people, I do lives on TikTok and I'll play the piano. And I always tell them, like, I don't really play very well and I don't really sing very well, but I like to do both a lot. I really enjoy it. I could play a song that I just heard on the radio, but I know enough theory because I did chorus for several years, enough theory to be like, I'm pretty sure it's in this key, but I have to run the scales to be like, okay, so that's three. Okay, I think that's B flat. I couldn't be 100% sure, but I don't know that that's really necessary. And I feel like that's, part of what I want to do with this podcast is like, let me open the door to people who think you have to go to the piano lessons and you have to love the piano lessons and you have to be such a studious, student. Was redundant, but you have to be like really involved in the daily practice and do your 100 hours or whatever it is. You can do your 100 hours in a different way. If that's you sitting down with Spotify and you're listening to No Need to Speak and you want to figure out how to play Marshall Dane's latest single, you can sit down, listen to it, and you can start and stop and plunk on the piano or plunk on the guitar. And it's just as valuable as spending hours learning theory. Theory would be helpful, but it's not the only way to do it. Like, being an artist like yourself isn't the only way to be in the music industry. And I just want to open that door for people to go, well, I don't have the look of an artist, or I don't have my voice isn't loud enough or interesting enough, or I don't know if I could write songs and perform. I just want to open that door so that people can see there's a lot of different ways to do it. You could have been
yeah.
the great student and you could be. I love watching people that sit down with sheet music and they just play it and I go, wow,
Yeah.
that is amazing. But they're also amazed that I can sit down and I'm playing and they're like, what are you playing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just nothing, just nothing,
Yeah.
just
Noodling around.
I'm just playing, and they're like, "What does that mean?" Like, because the idea of doing that is foreign to them.
And different ways of executing the a performance.
Yes.
Like, I've had many artists or many musicians say, why did you choose that chord? Or what chord are you trying to play there? And I'm like, I don't know. It sounds right. He goes, you know that's a this, this, this. And I'm like, I do not know that that's a this, D diminished minor, seven, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't. But they often are interested in, that's not how you would typically go from there to there. And I'm like, that's, that's,
That's
that's where interesting things happen. I mean,
yes.
sometimes you're brilliant and you can choose to mathematically do something interesting,
Mhm.
interesting, like Einstein, or you could luck out on it and be like, I don't know, what happens if I hit this cup with this much water and that cup with that much water, and hey, I didn't even know I was that good with rhythm. And next thing you know, you've got a different sound. And it's
I
just a different approach. It's I play the banjo, but I don't play a banjo like I can't play Steve Martin banjo or whoever the banjo guys are. But I play a banjo to do what I want it to do.
I I
You know?
just I think it's so important that people really hear that. You don't have to do it like everybody else does it.
No.
Jacob Collier went to, he's a British um artist, and he is wildly gifted with just any instrument he's ever touched. But he went to college for music, and they started teaching him all the theory, and he got to a certain point and he went, "Okay, that's enough. I don't need the rest of this. I know it sounds right, and even if it doesn't sound right, it's still right. There's just like nothing's wrong in music. Just do it however it sounds good to you." And I thought, God, I've spent my whole life not just in music, but people going, "Oh, there's only one way to do this thing."
That's the
And
problem.
and
There's so many.
music isn't like that at all. I mean, that's why we have so many genres. We're dealing with people going, "What does it sound like when I put water in a glass? What does it sound like when I stretch this fabric over this hollow thing and I hit it a certain, like, what happens?" And then you go, "Oh, that feels good. There's something about that is resonating in my insides that I've got to, oh, let me add this other thing to it." And that's how you make incredibly interesting and amazing music. But again, there's still people out there telling him, "Well, so there's only one way to do it."
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I mean, my advice is play. Play. It was never a chore for us as kids. I mean, if we went to a lesson and it wasn't, and like me, that was a chore because I was nervous walking to the lesson. Like, I didn't do my homework. But I mean, that was no different than going to class and not having my homework done either in school.
Right.
So, I mean, but yeah, the playing is the best part. When you see people that just sing for singing fun, as opposed to someone says, "I'm not singing unless I get paid." Well, I mean, yeah, there's two different ways to skin the cat, but it all started for the most part, unless you were like in some dictatorship, you must be a musician as a child. Well, then, but for the most part, it usually starts with just that love. And when you lose that, it's like those guys that are 30 years in the business and say, "I gave it up, I quit music." It's like, how? Why? Why? That's like saying I gave up water. It's
A
not the
hundred
water that's
percent.
bad. It's the person that turned that water into something that you didn't want. Don't worry about that. You know.
Okay, I've got a question about the beginning of your career. I have friends that want to be in the industry and they play and they're practicing and they're doing. And the first question that comes up is like, "So where do I go to find a gig?" I mean, are you walking up to coffee shops that do live music? Are you going to venues? Do you have to find a manager first? Like, what was your starting process like, and how did you feel about the process?
When you want to meet a girl, you go to where the people are. Period. You know, you want to meet a partner, you want you go to where that is, and you may not find it, but you go to where that is probably a club, train station, I don't know, like wherever you think you're going to find that person, and you think about, the kind of people that you'd want to be around, where would those people be? Same thing with music. If you want to be, I mean, I grew up in St. Catharines, and I still, as a young person, somehow, I don't know how I found them, but I remember going to see guys before I was old enough to be in a bar. And I remember finding that in this little divey bar was some dude playing acoustic guitar with a suitcase up on its long side, and his notes were on the top, handwritten, Neil Diamond songs and stuff. And I was just like, this sounds so good. This is amazing. I'm sitting in a little bar. I'm like 18 years old, not drinking, but I'm at this bar, and there's this guy playing music, and that's the only thing I care about. And there's nobody else there. It's like dead. And then the guy comes over and he's drinking. He's got his double jack, and he's like, I used to be, signed to this company. And I'm enthralled by his stories. He is the gambler. He is the guy on a train looking for whiskey, and he's telling me a story of where he's just ridden from. That to me was so intriguing that it was once I finally learned how to play, and I moved out of the actually, even in St. Catharines. No, I didn't look for that. Yeah, I did. I went to a bar. I used to go to a bar in St. Catharines where there was some guys from Brock University, and they would play acoustic guitar, and I would go and watch. If you're in the environment, I mean, if you're a person that loves music, but you don't talk at all, you're super, super, super shy, you're probably not going to run out to the front of the stage at, on a big concert because it's like somebody putting you into a mold that doesn't quite fit you. If you are internally driven to at least be around those dancers because you want to be a ballerina, or you want to find someone that does magic, or the guy that does works on the car next door, even though your dad doesn't, he does, and you love cars, so you're over there. You just got to find your people. And if it's music, you find the music you like.
I got you back.
Oh, that took that long for my. Hang on. I
Okay.
lost you. It took that long to happen again. Come on. Flip over. Flip over. Come on. Are we right side up now?
We are back.
I'm sorry about that. My phone died and it was plugged in. I don't know. It just all our juicy talk was just too much. It took all the juice out of it.
I love it. I was like,
The dramatic pause for
I was
emphasis
like,
on.
oh, hold on. I'll just, he'll come back.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can't, we
I
can't
tried my
end it like
computer. I
that.
pulled up my computer, and it was dead too. And I'm like, son of a gun. But I do remember what I was saying. If
Oh,
you want me to
good.
continue, because I was talking about, yeah, that need for going to the lessons and trying to, if that's not the way you learn, then that's just not the way you learn. I've never really been good that way either, in school as well as in music. So, but if you play around with it, you can absolutely get, you just, as long as you can get that little bit of joy. The person that can sit around and play at the campfire, that's that's the epitome of the blessing. Anything else is serving, I'll say it, serving the ego, and I'm guilty of it as well. That I sometimes think that this is, you can forget that that's not who you are. The pursuing part. I mean, you could be passionate and all the rest of it, but the it's like, Rick Rubin says, you make an offering, and when it's done, you just hand it up. That's it. Whether it be your own little version of hot cross buns, or, mommy,
Right.
look what I did. That's the joy right there. It's like when a kid walks up and shows you a picture they drew and it's horrible, and you're like, that's awesome.
I mean, it's such a weird thing. I mean, even I've started writing songs when I was 11, but I did instrumental piano music. If you can
Okay.
imagine a little 11-year-old playing things that sounded like, like a little baby Mozart, but not near as good. And it was like, oh, what will I do with this thing? And then when I started to try to write lyrics, writing lyrics was like, well, I only knew about telling people about Jesus and how to come to know him and be near him and how to worship him and all those things. And I had, not a whole lot of life experience, right? At 11 years old. And then when I was 27, 28, and I got divorced, and then, oh dear God, here came all the lyrics that I could ever imagine. And it was this full outpouring. I was writing songs every 2 or 3 days, and I hadn't played the piano in years. Do you feel like you have to have that kind of life change for the songs to come, or have you practiced this what's the word that I'm looking for, this craft so much that you can just sit down and like, today's the day I'm writing?
In Nashville, people there on the Music Row, they write 3 times a day. When they get an artist that comes from out of town that brings some inspiration to the table, you really get to exercise their craft, because they're so skilled. They have any weapon they want to pull out musically, any lyric they want to pull out musically, they have in their arsenal right here. They just pull out and say, what about this transition? And they're so brilliant. When they're left on their own to just write because they're forced to write 3 times a day for a publishing deal, so that you're putting in the numbers and you're putting in the time, sometimes I would assume, because I've written a lot, like where I've had to write 3 times a day at times, and it can, you then, you're back to serving something else. You're back to serving. You're back to trying to craft inspiration, and that can work if you're super. Even if you're super skilled, you still have to have those experiences that make you understand where that ebb and flow of emotion lies within people. So you can't quite get that perspective of looking at it from the angle that so many people feel it from until you've gone through it. Recently, I went through a adult divorce where I'm, you know, I'm a I'm halfway through my life, and I went through something that blew my mind. And you what was the point I was getting at? That is that you oh this that when it broke my heart, there's a lyric in a John Denver song, in the song This Old Guitar, and the very last verse says, "This old guitar gave me my lovely lady. It opened up her eyes and ears to me. It brought us close together, and I guess it broke her heart because it opened up a space for us to be." So when my heart broke open, even most recently, but I mean, it's been breaking since I was a child, since my father left when I was 5, I felt that pang of distress inside. And I didn't have a coping skill to deal with it. So music was the thing that, like you said, it soothes the soul. You fall into those songs because those poets say something to you. Those poets of old that spoke to us, they went through things. They felt things. They were predetermined to have super sensitive feelings anyway, probably, just like some people are dexterous and some people are great drawers. They natural gifts, they have the ability to tap in, but they still have to go to those places and tap into those places. And you either have to you have to be open to it, and then you have to be willing to go there. When my heart broke open, I realized it wasn't broken and my heart was all busted and I couldn't think or breathe. It is so much more open that I can feel. I'm feeling so much right now. It's almost gross how much I'm feeling because my heart is ripped open, but it's giving me the ability to feel everything. And I can stand at the top of a stage and look out at the men lining up at the side, and I can think to myself, I understand something about you right now because my heart is so open. So I'm just going to say something from this inside of this wide open, broken heart. I'm just going to say something real. And I'm going to watch those guys at the side, and they're going to turn around. And they do every time. They turn around and they look and they say, I was just saying that to my buddy. And I'm like, I know you were. And I didn't know you were saying that. But I know you were saying something real to him over there. And as long as I say something real from this spot where the heart's wide open, that's where you flip the script. You don't become a victim of your broken heart. You you recognize that it's not it's you don't have to look at it like it's broken and ripped and painful. You can look at it and say that, oh my goodness, the door just opened up and all this light is shining, and it's not used to it. So it's
Mm.
okay that it kind of feels intimidating. But the reality is that's where those compassion and understanding for people comes into play. Um, and that's the very opening sign to my new song, No Need to Speak, in the video, is this, because it says that I understand you. It's Vera and I, the interpreter and I, looking at each other, saying, I understand. That is our thing. The camera pans back and forth just to us silently in the middle of the field looking at each other. Because the ending lyric of that is, there's no need to speak because I see what you're saying. But the actual ASL, sign language interpretation, is your story, I understand.
Mm.
So that doesn't come, you don't understand things if you haven't had those experiences. Um, Not every person, I mean, I used to break up with a girlfriend when I was 25 years old just to feel pain so I could write a song. And
Wow.
that was a horrible thing to do. And I'm sure she hates me.
But I love that you would admit that because I mean, just being like a
You want to feel
ang
something.
I just like sometimes you just like I don't know. I might admit starting an argument once or twice because I just felt a little bit bored. I just felt like poking at something, like to
You
have
want
this.
something to stir.
Oh,
You
right.
want, yeah. So
Okay, well, tell me about the AS. You just mentioned the ASL, and I know that you have that in your music video for your latest single, "No Need to Speak," that came out in April. Tell me about your relationship with that. I grew up with American Sign Language. For those of you that don't know the acronym, I hate it when people mention acronyms and don't say what it is.
yes, thank
You've
you.
got to go to work in corporate world, and they're like, the CIP is connected to the GDT. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, yeah.
American Sign Language. American Sign Language. And my mother used to sign for somebody who was deaf at our church when I was growing up. So I was constantly watching her with her, and I was just in love with how beautiful the relationship that she had with him, giving him, which was a scary thing for me to even think about, as not being able to hear music, but giving him everything that was happening through her hands was such a powerful thing. So tell me what your experience is with ASL.
It's funny you mentioned that. Mine was very similar. My father being the minister, my mother recognizing that there was two deaf dudes in the church. My mom used to play the piano for the hymns, and so she decided that she would learn sign language to try and help uh, interpret some of the message um, to the two deaf guys. So, I was around sign language a lot. I was around deaf people a lot. I heard their verbal, audio cues that they would use, and it didn't throw me off by the time I was an adult when you hear some of those um, just verbal sounds.
Hmm.
And fast forward in 2017, which again, this is where, I mean, now that I look at it, I was already starting to change. The changes that happened to me between, like coming to terms with some decisions, in 2019, and then coming to more understandings and clarity in during COVID in 2020, 2021, 22. Um, uh, 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 Sorry, I just lost my spot there. Um, Hang
You
on a
talk about your
second.
relationship with ASL,
Oh, yes,
something that
yes, yes.
happened twice.
Sorry. That's right. So fast forward to 2017. I had been traveling. By that point, I'd been traveling the North Canadian Arctic. Um, it's another random story, but I've been traveling the North Canadian Arctic since about 2007, every year. And it was what opened my mind that, wow, I don't know. I can't tell you what happened 2,000 years ago. I can't. I can't. I wasn't there. I don't know for sure. But this is what I do know. Those mountains in the Arctic, I didn't make those, and neither did the guy up the street, and neither did the guy that built all those buildings in Toronto. The icebergs, that's natural. The caribou, the water, that is God. All of that. I mean, so are we, and so are the buildings that we create, but that natural existence is what opened up my eyes to realize that is the cherry on top. Is the natural beauties in this world. And so when I was in 2017, I met a woman that told me her story about why she learned sign language. And I was in the Arctic. Actually, I was back from the Arctic, and I was on the east coast of outside of Canada. There's a little island called Sable Island, and it's off the east coast, about 200 kilometers into the Atlantic. And it's a sandbar that had been uh, uh, a lot of Scandinavian boats and European boats coming across the Atlantic would get shipwrecked on this sandbar. And they had horses, and they would leave their horses and they would build a smaller little raft and get 200 kilometers back to Canada. But their horses would stay on the island. So this is the magical, mystical island of horses that still remains to this day. There's over 400 horses, wild horses, and two people live on this island. They're Parks Canada guards that live there. So when I was there, and again, all this crazy beauty, I was with Alex Trebek of Jeopardy on that little horse island before he passed away, 2 years before he passed away. And sitting at a table on the very last night, we had this little tiny ship and we would zodiac to this island. And this woman that had been coming with us the whole time, there's Alex and his wife and these other famous people and rich people. And All of a sudden at dinner the last day, Alex is telling his grandiose story of his life, and this other guy who developed the first word processor telling his grandiose story. And the humble, quiet little woman beside me says, "You don't want to hear my story." And everybody's like, "Tell us your story." And she tells us her story. And it changed my life. I was crying. Alex Trebek's story of wonderment and fame and glorious popularity, I gotta say, as interesting as it was, my heart didn't move. But this woman that told me the story about how she was a skier, broke her legs, became a doctor who wanted to help people that hurt themselves as athletes, and then takes a summer school job, and they say, "Go to room 26B." And she comes back and says, "There's 8 deaf kids that are 10 years old. I'm not in the right class." They're like, "Yeah, you are. You just have to babysit them. They're getting into trouble." And she goes, "There's no one to talk to them." And yada, yada, yada. You see where this is going. And she says, "I don't care about being a doctor anymore. I don't care about being a skier. I don't care about any of that. I care about helping these 8 children." And while we were sitting there at the table, she goes, "The other day before we left, I got an email, and one of my students just turned 24 years old, and she just got her master's." You know, right? And
It's that having that human connection. I was talking about this with a friend the other day about how important human connection is and how badly we need it. It's like we went through the pandemic where we were isolated, and I feel like outside of the horribleness of the pandemic and all that it implied, there was something that was happening within all of us that was like a turning something that was like a real low light to this beam in our eyes going, okay, what is important to you? What
mm-hmm.
matters to you? How are you connecting with the world that you're in today? Like if you had to sit inside your house for the rest of your life and order your groceries and get everything sent to your house and you're never going outside, like what is going to happen to you? And the very first thing that I ended up doing coming out of the pandemic was I started going to concerts. And I had never really gone. I mean, I went when I was little, but it wasn't something that my partners liked to do. And I was I hate to say a slave to my partners, but I did what they wanted to do. And when I went, I had this like near religious experience. I was so excited about the person that I was seeing. I had waited for months and months on end. I stood in the room. Everybody was there, was waiting for the same experience. We were waiting to see this one person sing the songs that we knew and the song that he wrote for me. I don't know how he knew what was going on in my life, but he knew exactly what was going on in my life, and he wrote an entire song that was, I mean, dedicated to me. It wasn't in the notes of the record, but I knew it was for me, and I remember feeling the feeling that I felt when I used to stand in church, and I thought, well, how can that be? We were all standing in this place literally waiting for the same person, looking for a similar experiencing, hoping to find joy and light and love amongst each other. And I've just never experienced, well, I mean, I did when I was in church. And so then I feel like that's what made me realize that we really need the human connection. We really need to have these experiences where it's not just the music that's touching your listener, and you're adding this element in where people are going, what is she saying? What is she doing with her hands? What does that mean? And having that additional way. I mean, obviously for the deaf community, that is the way that a lot of them understand language, but it's an additional way to understand language. So is that part of the reason why you wanted to showcase it in your video, or
You're touching on so many beautiful points. That need for connection, the deaf community has it zeroed in. They have it locked in. They don't take their eyes off you. You walk down the street these days and you try and say hi to somebody as you're walking by, you're lucky if you can get a good day out of them. And you probably won't get an eye contact out of them. The whole deaf scene is all eye contact. You can't talk in the deaf world without your eyes open. That's the whole thing. So even, and you know what, I'm going to round it up to the song, because this song is about the values that I've learned from the deaf, my deaf relationships. But it is a love song. Do not kid yourself. It is absolute love song. And I don't mean romantic love song. This is a song about love. And this is a song that speaks to exactly what we were feeling during that pause, because we recognized the value of connection, the people that we care about. We saw people that love each other stop talking to each other. We saw people really split and divide. And it was like, I'm not that guy. I don't quit. I don't quit the people I care about. I stand on the front porch with a shotgun and I protect the household, proverbially, you know,
Right.
and that won't ever change. And the people that in the, when you love somebody and yet you turn away and you shut them out, it is, I grew up from a community, like a religion that would shut you out if you didn't do it the same way. And I'm not a buyer of that form of reaction personally. I mean, you got to sometimes let people go, but shutting people out when 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 love is what is really matters, shutting people out is not an option. And so when people told me not to go out on New Year, on Christmas Eve, and hand out hot food to the homeless people, which I do every year since 2011, and they said I couldn't do it because they had the COVID, I was like, I ain't listening to you, because my heart is what's speaking here. And at the end of the day, after it's all over, that's what we are going to come down to. And when, and no need to speak, it is absolutely about, you don't have to say anything. I can look at you. I will not turn away, even though I might feel like, hey, man, your story's over. No, I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to stay connected. I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to let you know that I'm not going to let you down. I might not have all the answers, but you're going to have a, a, a companion in me. You're going to have support from me. And so no need to speak is absolutely about not turning away from people you care about. It's about not closing your eyes when you should stay vigilant. And that's not just for your own personal, it's for others too. Because you want that connection. You need that connection. And the deaf community, like I said, they already have it figured out. Their body language tells you what time it is for them. So even when you don't understand what words they're saying, if you don't, and there's sometimes I don't understand, I'm slow at visually reading their signs, but I know what they're saying. I can tell what they're saying. They're not mad, or they are mad. Like like you can get the gist. And so yeah, that feeling of connection is so powerful, and I think that's why I've gravitated towards the sign language. It's a full body expression, a three-dimensional full body expression of how you feel. If you say to somebody, how are you doing today? Like, I'm okay. Well, your face doesn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
Your face is not saying what your mouth just said. And a deaf person would call you out on it and say, that's not true. What else is going on? And I like that. I like that realness. I like that they don't have a choice but to stay connected.
Which
You know,
reminds you,
we can often
therefore.
look at our phone and say, keep talking. We can often say, don't worry about it. I have other people to talk to. Like, or yeah, anyway. So yeah, sign language and understanding each other and staying connected, not separating. That division is unhealthy. People not looking people in the eyes. It's like, come on, you know.
It's a weird space, and I do think for the younger generations, it's something that they really struggle with because social media has allowed them to kind of look down and dig in the in that space for social behavior, whether they're texting or DMing or posting. It's like it's made it hard for them to look up and have that kind of human interaction. They're more nervous when they go out places where they have to ask for instruction or directions, whatever. They don't know how to do it because they don't do it with each other. I think it's a tremendous reminder that in order to really connect, we have to really be paying attention. We have to
That's it.
really be listening and looking. I mean, one of the things that I've talked to my friends about for before I did this, I was like, I've never interviewed anyone. Obviously, I've had conversations with people over my entire life. Like, how will I be able to understand how to do this well so that I can give the artist or the expert or the person that I'm talking to an opportunity for the audience to understand who you are? You have been so incredibly open and vulnerable and honest. I'm truly overwhelmed by your presence and your spirit. I think that it's I mean obviously I listened to some of your interviews, and I don't think that I thought it was going to be dragging things out of you, but you have your gut was right. Your gut was right. There was a and I don't just say that because you're an artist, but your gut was right in that you need to be connecting with people on a regular basis. There is something so incredible about your spirit, and I just cannot thank you enough for being on this podcast that isn't even a podcast yet. Like, do you know how crazy that is? Like, it was like, hi, I would like you to be on this thing that I haven't even done yet, and it's going to be fun and it's going to be great, but you can't see it yet. Like, it's a crazy thing to agree to do, but like it says something about who you are as an individual. So one of the things, part of the reason why I started this is because I became a huge fangirl. I'd never been one before. And that's because of my religious background. I wasn't allowed to idolize humans.
Mhm.
But now that I'm an adult and I can do whatever I want, I am idolizing hard. I have entered, I understand that this person is human and real and, probably does things that I would cringe at, but they make music that I really, really love. And so, one of the things that I want to add to the end of my interviews, I love rapid fire questions.
Yeah,
And I think that people who love you and are fans of you want to know all of the itty bitty tiny things. And instead of getting into your personal life or your bank account or your house or any of those things,
that's
because we won't
boring.
do that. I have a couple of questions, and you answer them however you'd like. You can give a short answer, a long answer. It doesn't matter. But I have 7 of them. We're trying to come up with a title, like it needs to be like blah 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 7 Up with Heather Lovelady. I don't know what it's going to be called. We're going to do something with it, but we're not there yet. So let's just start with the first one. What would be your ideal vacation? Like, what would you be doing? Where would you be?
I think I'd like to go back to Costa Rica. I like beach and I like monkeys. So
Love. I did
let's go
hear
to
there's a
Costa Rica.
did hear there's a lot of monkeys in Costa Rica. That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
you're a beach guy. Okay, number 2, your dream band. The people that make up the band could be dead or alive, and I need a name for the band that doesn't already exist. And you can
Oh.
have whatever you want. You can have a piano player or a guitarist or whatever. However you want to make your band up.
Hmm. Sheesh. I have a feeling my band would be like 20 people strong. I'd have Whitney Houston singing with Amanda Marshall. I'd have, um,
It's your band.
yeah. I mean, I'd probably ask Eric Clapton to jump in on some guitar. Um, make it Joe Satriani to do some solos. Um, I'd probably want Prince to come back and let me, you know, let me do some songs with him, that kind of thing, in my band, but he's allowed to be in my band. Uh, you know,
And what would
uh,
you call it?
looking for trouble. I don't know.
Love.
Um,
Love.
I don't know.
Love. I love that. Okay, the most overrated and the most underrated holiday.
Most overrated holiday was probably Florida. I went to Florida as a kid, and we went to, like, I don't know where we went, but it was like I was just a child, and it was me and like seven brothers and sisters, or six brothers and sisters, and my mom without my stepfather, and it was. I was hoping for like Disneyland or whatever that cool thing is that happens down there, and I didn't get any of those things. I got like Epcot Center or something. I don't know what I got, but it was like the Science Center. I'm not a science guy. Does this look like a science guy? Um, so
Where's the Hall of Fame?
that was that. And the most underrated is the Arctic. I mean, I don't know. I think that, and the island of St. Croix. I used to go to the island of St. Croix that nobody really knows about. It's in the Virgin Islands. It's American owned, but it was the smallest, kind of the runt of the litter of the islands, and yet it had such little character and quirks about it that I thought that's a really cool little place. So St. Croix and the Arctic. I think people think, oh, it's freezing. It's like, don't you worry. You see your first iceberg and you're not cold anymore, and you start meeting the people out there, and you've never seen nothing like that. So
I'm gonna have
they
to
make
put
it
that
look
on
like
the
a National
list.
Geographic only, but it really is. It's the coolest thing.
I have to put that on the list. Weird food combo that only you enjoy. Nobody else wants to have this weird food combo that you love.
Man, I don't even know what that is. I like everything. Trying to think of what I put with stuff that people don't do.
Are you a ketchup on eggs? Are you a
No.
sugar and
Oh,
grits?
I don't eat eggs anymore, so no ketchup on eggs. Although I used to put ketchup on eggs. I like mustard a lot. It's like I could do nacho chips and mustard. Like if I'm at the ball game, at a football game, and they run out
Yeah.
of nacho sauce in the confection stand,
Yeah.
I'll grab mustard. And I actually really enjoy mustard on a lot of things. Mustard and French fries. I mean,
Okay.
I can do it.
Okay. That's not crazy weird, but I'll give it to you.
It's all right.
What is the kindest thing anyone has ever done or said for you or to you?
Hmm. The first thing that comes out of my head is my father telling me he was proud of me after many years of playing music. And I played Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin at a bar one night. And he came up to me after, he goes, son, I'm proud of what you do. And that was the first time he'd ever said that. And probably hasn't said it since. But that was a big turning point because I had left the church by then. I was not a minister anymore. And it took him a lot of pushing the ego down or whatever he'd been so used to doing for his whole life. So, yeah,
That's really good.
I'd
That's a
say it
good
was
one.
that.
Okay, now that we're gonna flip it all together. Personality pet peeve. If you meet somebody and they have this personality trait, it gives you the full ick. You're like, there's no way that we could possibly be friends because you have this one thing that really turns me off.
I don't know the way to say it, but when people absolutely try to force an opinion on somebody else that they claim as truth and yet have no actual ability to prove, I have a hard time watching people push people around like that. And I saw a lot of that during 2020, 2021, 2022. Um, yeah, because I mean, I come from a place where I was told exactly what I had to do all the time. And it was just based on people that were saying things about, you know, 5,000 years ago.
Right.
People talking about stuff that didn't even happen to their generation. Um, I have, and it's a bit of a pet peeve because I feel bad for those people that they're kind of stuck in that place. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I find it's difficult to have a conversation with me when somebody is pretty strong in their opinion about something that is really non-consequential.
I mean, it's kind of like bullying somebody with your opinion.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I used to say it when people would tell me that I had to believe a certain way when it came to religion. It was like I call it cursing people in the name of Jesus. It's like, you're so pressed that it has to be a certain way that you can't open your mind to anything else, and it's really frustrates me as well. The very last thing, in my 7 rapid fire questions, in my boo boo. I don't know. We got to come up with a little tune for that. What are your words to live by? And I think you might have kind of already touched on this, but I'd like to know what you'd say now. What are your words to live by?
yeah. Definitely the two people you got to make happy are your 8-year-old inside yourself and the 80-year-old inside yourself. Um, there's no bad weather, just wrong clothing. Um,
Wow.
we're often in a rush, and I was once told by a Greenlandic dude, "There's no need to worry. The place we are going to is not moving away from us." I also apologized one time to the same Greenlandic dude because my friends interrupted me as they walked by, and he said, "There's no reason to say sorry. You are not mine, and I am not yours."
Wow.
So, love is all that matters in the end.
It is.
And every richest, most successful, the person that thinks they have it all together or that looks like they have it all together at the end of the day still faces all the same human things we do.
Hmm.
So, those aren't the goals. The goals are the core of all of that. And when they're all laying there at the very end of their days, they all say, "I wish I took more time to love. I wish I had more time with family. I wish I did
Hmm.
more happy things and didn't pursue the other things as hard." You wanted the same results of happiness, and that was the goal, but we were all, you know, given the best we could to try and do. Some people are told to have RSPs. My family thought the world was going to end in 1986. So there was no talk about RSPs. It just depends on who you're brought up by. But at the end of the day, the core value between you, me, Florida, Africa, Europe, it's the heart. That's it. So I think my biggest line is love is all that matters.
I hate to be redundant, but I do love that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I feel like if we could treat each other with that root, it would be a much
That's right.
kinder
Lead
world.
from the heart. That's what that
Right.
expression is. Lead from the heart.
Do you have an up and coming artist that you're really loving right now that you need to kind of set our listeners on?
I can't say I do, but there is one guy in Toronto that I've been enjoying his rise because it's humble,
Hmm.
and I like the way he shoots from, and his name is Julian Taylor. And I've
Okay.
just been kind of, and I never gone for a coffee with the guy or nothing, but just watching from the outskirts, I'm like, I like how you shoot. I like how you connect. Um, and I mean, I'm not the best, most knowledgeable person of all the cool artists out there. I know there's tons of great up and coming people. I just don't know them because I got my own head in the sand. But yeah, Julian Taylor is one guy that I think is really good, and
Okay.
I enjoy his plight.
What song would you say that you've recorded that if I had to this is the song that represents Marshall Dane? What is that song?
No need to speak.
God, I love that. You know what that tells me is that your path is forward. That like wherever you started, because if it was if say you said it was a song that you did 10 years ago, then it's a looking back thing, right? I mean, it may be a great song and it may have been a really pivotal something that happened, but the fact that your best representation is something that you just put out is, yeah, moving forward, evolving and growing. I love that. Okay, what's coming up next for you? I know that you have a show. You have a show
I got a
tonight.
show right there.
We are
Right there.
behind the
They're
scenes.
waiting for sound check for about 27 minutes. And
Sorry.
I'm watching
Sorry.
them walk past and forth. I'm like, it's raining outside. They're probably going to be late. So yeah, I got a show this afternoon. I got 2 performances out here. This is a brand new country festival happening in Port Credit, Ontario. Um, uh, I think Wednesday I am up in Wasaga Beach, which, I mean, if you're from the States, these are all just, communities probably within a couple, 3-4 hours from where I am right now. And, yeah, I mean, the launch of the new single is kind of opening up doors to new performances throughout the summer. I'll be doing a lot more solo performances where I'll be, storytelling and, inspiration and entertainment kind of thing. So I'll be, yeah. And there's lots of that, just piling up throughout the summer. I mean, we were adding 3 dates yesterday, and every day there's something new added. So
So
it's,
exciting.
it's
I
good.
I cannot tell you what a pleasure it was. This far exceeded my expectations on what this would be like. I knew I'd love it because obviously, but thank you for making this such an incredible experience and such an incredible conversation. I wish you
Pleasure.
love and joy. You don't need luck. Love and joy everywhere you go and in everything that you do. May you find the right people and all the right moments and find yourself in a place that really makes you feel good about where you are in the world. Uh, this was my pleasure. Thank you so much for
Amen.
your time today.
Right back at you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the wonderful questions, and thank you for the fun questions, and thank you for the heartfelt questions. I like that. Yeah, I can tell where you shoot from, and it's enjoyable.
Thank
So,
you so much.
yeah,
A lot of fun. All right. Good luck tonight. Break a
thank you very much.
leg. Do all the good things. Have a great
Will do.
time. All right. Bye
You
bye.
too. Ciao, ciao.